What is going on, everyone? Parsnip here, and today I wanted to go ahead and talk about columns, what they do, why you should make them, and how to make them. So for starters, I'm gonna go ahead and start making a really basic column with wood. Now this is pretty much the easiest material you could go ahead and get besides dirt at the start of the game. And if you really want to make your first house and you want to keep it off ground and just have a simple column, go ahead and do this. I'll go ahead and show you guys how to improve this column step by step. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a second column exactly like I did with the first one, except this time I'm gonna put a wooden beam on the center. This will give it more life, more detail. It'll make it look unique and not so boring compared to the first one. Going to do the same thing with the next column, except this time I'm gonna go ahead and put rope on the edges so it removes the rough look from the wooden walls. Now if you use the different material, you don't have to put rope. You could make it any way you want. You actually don't even have to put a wooden beam. I'm gonna go ahead in the future and make some more columns, all different and unique, so you guys could go ahead and have an idea of what it's possible to make with columns. Lastly, I'm gonna go ahead and join the last column by making a wooden arc at the top. I'm gonna go ahead and put, I guess, glass and a wooden decoration, sorry, a plant on the bottom. So this is pretty much what your first column could look like. Of course, it could be better, could be worse. It really depends on you and what you plan to do, how much time you plan to waste, and so on. Okay. Alright, so here I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys a different column. It's gonna be with pearl stone, and it's gonna be a little bit better than the initial one. Of course, the more complex you make the column, it's gonna be harder to make multiple of the same columns, and mainly you'll want to put a lot of details and stuff on the columns much later on the game when you have access to more material and you don't really need to rush anything since you have a lot of time. So I'm gonna go ahead and make I guess you could call this a plant holder by putting some rich mahogany leaves on top of this V-shaped plant holder I guess I made. So as you can see, by doing this, the column already looks more live, has more color, and personally I would prefer this one over the simple first one I made, the wooden one that's right next to it. So after I finish the bottom and top supports, I go ahead and decide to put some stairs. And if you notice, the stairs do not match the color of the column, and instead of just going and getting pearl wood or another type of steps or platforms actually that match the color, I just go ahead and paint it white. Now painting helps a lot on every type of build, and I'll get more into it in another video, but here I just go ahead and use some white paint to make the steps match the column. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and make a not much more complex, but with more details, I guess. This column, I'm gonna go ahead and make two of, and put something at the top so you can see where your building could look like. This building will also, not this building, but this column will also have some decorations so you guys have an idea of what you could do. I go ahead and put spikes. I immediately regret that I put the spikes because I keep stepping on them. But if you do plan to make some sort of dark citadel or castle and you do use spikes, make sure you put that for last, as it will get in your way. So at the upper part of the column, I go ahead and leave an opening as a cross shape. Now you could go ahead and make a circle or a triangle or whatever shape it is you manage to fit in the upper part. I have done this before. If you guys seen my world tour video on my main house, the upper one is actually a cross with lights inside. This one I decided to go just for a even cross, I guess. The bottom's not bigger than the top. And by doing so, it gives more depth to the upper column and, again, details. I go ahead and put platforms in the middle to serve as lights. and paint the lights and spooky wood black. So after I put that, make the arc, I go ahead and decide that I'm gonna put some more lights in the middle, then I'll put some fences on the back to make it look sort of like a gate. Again, this is just my personal build that I decided to randomly make. Now it could be different, it could look better, worse. Really depends on you, what you're willing to try, and what materials you have at your disposal, as well as time. So as you can see, this is pretty much done. I go ahead and connect the upper part of the columns since I made the arcs higher than the columns themselves. And that's pretty much it for this one. So next I'm gonna go ahead and make a elevated house. Now most people would make a house that's not touching the ground to keep away from zombies and other sort of monsters that appear in Terraria. Especially as your first house, you want something that's a little bit safer than just some wooden doors and a square at the bottom. So a good way to prevent zombies and monsters from coming in your house is to keep the house off the ground. Now instead of just making a big floating box at the sky, you could go ahead and just put some columns at the bottom. Now the reason why all of my columns are made pretty much with just walls, and some have blocks, they never get in the way of you walking in between them, is for you to have a better access of both sides of your house. Because at the start, especially when you don't have wings, you don't have fast movements or grappling hooks and all of that, you want to be able to get from one side to the other as fast as you can. So ideally you want to avoid blocking off the way for you to go from one side to the other. So after making the square floating house, I decide that I'm gonna make the columns for this a bit more green. So I use grass walls. Now you might be wondering, why grass walls? That doesn't even look sturdy. It's gonna be weird. And it really doesn't matter what you use as a wall. I mean, everything's gonna look pretty good, I guess, depending what you use to mix it with. So after making the initial columns, I decided to pick what I'm gonna put as the upper part of the column and the bottom part of the column. Now to make it different from the other builds, I'm gonna go ahead and use a different material so you guys can understand that mixing and matching is completely okay. And as always, it really depends on you and your taste. So if you think that grass walls looks bad with rich mahogany wood, then make it out of something else. Make it out of I don't know, burro wood or whatever you think works. Again, you could also just change the walls if you don't like that type of wall, or paint it if you like the texture but not the color. So here I had come up with a problem that the water's not sorry, the water's not actually disappearing. So I go ahead and try to get rid of it. I end up putting some more water at the end as the water does not go away. And yeah, so I go ahead and make it 2 blocks thick, the bottom part, just to make it look sturdier. I'm gonna go ahead and even make it look more sturdy at the end. I put some rope to look like railings, I guess. You could go ahead and use fence or whatever it is. I just went for rope because I thought it would match. As I did not like the reddish color to the rich mahogany wood that I have going on here, I painted brown. And again, I use a lot of paint to make the materials match more, especially if I like the way the texture of said material looks like. So after making the columns, I'm gonna go ahead and put lights. Of course, you always want to have lights everywhere you build, especially on darker areas like the bottom part where you're not gonna have rooms and stuff. So make sure you don't forget to put lights, otherwise at night it's gonna be really annoying when you jump down and there's a bunch of mobs and you didn't see. So after putting the railings, the water, the platforms, and everything, I'm gonna go ahead and finish this build and show you guys what it will look like. Then I'll go ahead and make, I guess, a final column with some redstone so you could see even more potential that a column has on your build and what you could do to improve your own build. So as you can see, this is what the build looks like when it's complete. I put some decorations inside, changed the walls. Of course, this really doesn't matter for this guide, but this is just so you guys have an idea of what this particular column will be doing, as it will be holding this building. Personally, I think it looks much better than a floating building, and of course you could just have another house at the bottom instead of columns, but if you do decide for columns, this is somewhat what it will look like. So now I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys the last columns I make. I decided to go for a pretty simple choice of materials, even though this column is gonna be a bit more complex, as it will be using actuators, redstones, and gem locks. For those of you that don't know, gem locks are a new item from the 1.3.1 update, and it serves as a signal, meaning by placing the gem inside the gem lock, it will normally activate your redstone, much like a switch. So to make it funner, instead of just putting redstone with a switch to activate actuators, and again, if you guys do not know what an actuator is, it makes your block active or not. So imagine the solid blocks that I have all over the place. If I put an actuator on it and activate it, the block will become much like a wall, as you could pass through it. Now this is great, so you can make entrances or secret doors or hidden rooms and all of that. And by doing this on a column, it will pretty much provide an entrance or a safe zone so that mobs will not be able to get in. This is also great if you're playing multiplayer or other servers, and not everybody has large gems. So this is really cool, since it costs like 15 smaller gems to make this large gem. So it's really not that common for players to be walking around with the exact type of gem that you're using for your gem lock. So after putting the bottom area that I made exactly for the gem lock, that's where the gem lock activator will go, I guess, I go ahead and put these solid blocks in front of the wall. Now, exactly like I said before, by activating the gem lock, these will become much like the wall and you'll be able to pass through it. So I go ahead, put some lights, and start working on the wiring. So this is pretty simple. This is much later game, as you do need the NPCs for this. So I go ahead and make a pretty simple straight line up to the column with the wrench and wiring, and put actuators only on the middle part of the column. By doing so, only this part will disappear, and yeah, not much more there is to say about this. So as you can see, by placing the gem, you can go through the column. By removing the gem, it closes. So you could put this in the front part of your house, or make the upper part balcony, or a second story. And the bottom spot, you could just put, I guess, in between the columns, a house. And by doing so, zombies and stuff won't get in. You don't have to worry about your doors. You actually don't really need a door unless you're going to be making the bottom part of your house rooms. I normally use the easiest floor, the bottom floor, which is one of the most access, as a crafting station, or where I keep my chest, as it's what I normally need. And by doing so, it just provides faster mobility. You don't have to keep opening and closing the doors, or when there's a goblin invasion, pirate invasion, blood moon, solar eclipse, you really don't have to worry about putting blocks in front of the door or closing the door constantly. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for the columns. There's endless amount of ways you could build a column. It really depends on your taste and the materials you have. So I hope this helps you guys column wise, and I'm gonna go ahead and catch you guys next time.